Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
In the military, veterans answer the call to serve. Now it's our turn. At Hire Heroes USA, they're changing lives, helping veterans and military spouses secure meaningful careers, all at no cost.
With over 100,000 success stories and counting nationwide, they're connecting skilled veterans with employers who recognize their true value. Visit hireheroesusa.org to access their services or to support their mission.
It's tourney time, and with FanDuel's Dog of the Day, you can get a daily profit boost during the College Conference Championships to bet on any underdog. So get ready to celebrate some upsets.
No one saw that coming, except for me, baby.
21 plus in President select states. Opt-in required. Minimum plus 100 odds required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Real people making bold moves. Unforgettable journeys into life's next chapter. This is the Second Act Podcast.
Every day is a new chance. Mindset on a new path. Anything is possible. Any limit I surpass. Everything is in my grasp. I got tunnel vision with a pickaxe. Life is more fun when you live like there's no strings attached.
John, we are back on the Second Act for another exciting week of conversation. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm nursing some sore legs. We went up to the beautiful mountains that we enjoy here in Colorado, went snowboarding with my boys and my wife, and you come back on a work day and it's like, man, you realize you don't recover as well as I used to. But man, it was such a great time just being with family, being in the car. The car ride is almost what I cherish more than being on the mountain, just to hear some of the conversations that my boys dive into and the questions we get to ask them on the way up or way back down. So great weekend from us, and we got some decent snow, so that's always a positive when you're trying to enjoy the slopes. How about you?
Any questions from your son stand out? Like anything that was like, whoa, that was...
I did ask him, he said, hey, Dad, I'd love to listen to a book on tape on the way up, because they're into the Hardy Boys and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
9 and 12. That's something that gets him going. And I said, we could listen to a podcast. And like, no, we've heard those, Dad.
I'm over that. Yeah.
And so that conversation ended quickly, but we put on an audio book for a little bit, and that was good. How are you guys doing up there?
Yeah, we're doing great. We had a basketball game this weekend to go to. That was a lot of fun to watch. Brad is actually involved in that program, so that's exciting. Our guest coming up here, we'll share a little bit more about him in a second. And I was thinking about our business and our entrepreneurial journeys, John, and I didn't realize how many distractions occur on a daily basis that can disrupt your flow of achieving whatever you want to achieve in that day, in that week, in that month, in that year. There's planned distractions, right? Like a vacation, like you said, going up to the mountains and stuff. But then there's just people that want to talk, or people that have ideas, or people that there's just all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you just need to remind yourself. I remind and am reminding myself a lot recently about keeping your eye on the prize. So with that said, I'm sure this might come up in our overall discussion today. I think we should introduce our guest.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, it's a great, you talk about distractions. It's the thoughts that come up on a daily basis. It's a great time to plug that book, The One Thing.
Yes.
Helps really regain focus. And I see Brett shaking his head, when I mentioned the title, but amazing book. I have read it several times, probably going to break it open again as you start something new and those distractions come flooding back of all the other things you need to be doing or should be doing. And it's just good to focus and regain your focus and regain what's important. Lou Holtz, that football coach, used to start off every practice with what's important now.
Yep.
Also win, and, get his players back in focus with what are they doing today to move that ball down the field to make themselves better in the time that they've got allotted to becoming better. So pretty important. But yeah, man, let's kick it off.
All right. Today, we are excited to welcome Brett Murphy to the show. Brett is a seasoned real estate developer and investor specializing in adaptive reuse, small-scale development, and hospitality projects. He's a Colorado native, has been a top-producing realtor since 2008, earning national recognition for his expertise in residential and investment properties.
Nice.
Beyond residential real estate, Brett has extensive experience in fix and flips, rental properties, commercial developments, and land redevelopment. His latest project is the revitalization of a 115-year-old building in downtown Littleton, showcases his commitment to preserving historical charm while fostering new business opportunities. Inspired by his grandfather's legacy, Brett is transforming the space into Murphy's Variety, a hub for local businesses and dining experiences. With a hands-on approach and deep industry knowledge, Brett continues to shape Colorado's real estate landscape while helping clients and investors achieve their property goals. Outside of work, Brett enjoys spending time with his family outside, doing all the amazing things Colorado has to offer. Welcome to the show, Brett.
Thank you for the generous introduction, Michael.
Yeah.
You know, Michael, and I don't want to jump into it too far right now, but as you're reading Brett's impressive bio, we have had a lot of guests on that talk about their second act. And you say, as he is revitalizing a 115-year-old building here in Colorado, what a cool tie-in to second act, third act. This building's probably seen so many, upgrades and facelifts inside and outside, but talk about second act of an asset or second act of a building. Man, if walls could talk, I bet 115 years, it's seen a lot. But I'd love to hear Brett's take on that and doing historical projects like that. But Brett, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah,
It's
thank
exciting
you.
to have you on.
Thank you guys for having me. That's a pleasure to be here, and I've really enjoyed listening to your podcasts, and I've got some really good insights from both Michael and John, and a lot of your guests on the show. I'm a fan.
That's awesome.
We love having a fan and an amazing guest on at the same time, Brett. And before we sort of roll back time to learn where things started with you, I'll have to share that my son and I drive by your building quite often because one of his favorite places to look for used Lego figures is out in Littleton. So the route we take drives by your building, and I've seen it sort of evolve and transform at various stages since we've started going back and forth. But we're looking forward to hearing more about that story as we get through this.
And you're like a unicorn, man, a Colorado native. Those are hard to come by these days, I think.
It's very unique. I very seldom find someone who actually grew up here, and it's a nice nod to Colorado, though.
Yeah. Do you have the sticker, the native sticker?
No, I don't have the native sticker, just because I just like to let people know about it right to their face.
I like it.
Well, Brett, you're native to Colorado. How far back does that go? Did your family start here? Your mom and dad, and then there's some mention of your grandfather earlier as well.
Yeah, so my parents moved here from Kansas, and my grandpa, they grew up in a small towns in Kansas, but sub 1,000 people.
Okay.
My grandpa had a 5 and dime store in a
Nice.
small town in Kansas called Murphy's Variety. So they just had a variety of all the random little things that you might need or want, and so you don't have to drive an hour to go get things. So his store was called Murphy's Variety, and that's where I got the name for this building is Murphy's Variety, but my variety is mixed use of tenants and businesses and spaces. So it's kind of the
cosmopolitan variety, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of creating the 5 and dime of retail strip. So
Nice.
And the 5 and dime of the retail strip being largely mom and pop businesses, non-credited tenants, that kind of the lost gap in the market that people don't rent to anymore. The banks are not as friendly to owners that have what they'd consider non-credited tenants, which is just not big financially backed companies. So it all kind of links together, right? It's a 5 and dime of small mom and pop things.
It's
if
amazing.
you will. So that's kind of the idea behind that name and the building. So
Now, did your grandfather create the retail space but didn't own the is there a history of real estate ownership and development, or did he have the retail space and then that sort of moved into your dad and then you now? Tell me about that.
no, the real estate got put into the blood by my dad. My dad
Okay.
came out to Colorado as a teacher, and
Okay.
then he was a teacher for developmentally disabled and was making about $8,000 a year, full salary.
Okay.
So when he had my sister, who's 3 years older than me, he was at the store and was looking at buying, I think it was like sandwich meat or diapers, and he had to decide which one to buy because he just didn't have any money. And he grew up very modest, very, very modest. And so he then decided I need to do something a little bit different, and decided real estate was a good path for him because he could get a license in a reasonable amount of time and then go for it. And he was kind of known for going to garage sales and, buy something and flip. He'd flip garage sale things and buy air conditioning units in the winter time and sell them in the summertime. And then, so he just thought the real estate was a nice path for him,
Yeah.
and took a chance at it. And so that's where it started. And I think that was in 1982. So he literally is the story, and a real story, of couldn't buy diapers.
Yeah.
And had to figure out how to make ends meet for his family.
That's incredible. My dad would get along with your dad because he also is a garage sale aficionado and would find things oftentimes still in their boxes, just unused, buy it for $1 and flip it for whatever. And in some cases, some stores were even willing to take it back, and he would wind up with like a store credit. It's crazy what's out there. But yeah, that's an awesome story.
Yeah, and so the segue for that then would be, then my dad got into real estate, and in the 80s, there was a lot of bank foreclosures. And so what the banks used to do, which is really interesting, is they used to be able to foreclose on a property and then make profit on it. They can't do that anymore. And because that's obviously kind of a conflict of interest if you're almost incentivized to take a house back from somebody.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so what they used to do is they'd take a house back in foreclosure, and then they'd hire a broker who would then contract out all of the contractors. They'd have a money to fix it up, and then they'd basically, the banks would do their own fix and flips, if you will. And that's a hard job, though. That's way more than just selling a real estate. But he was so hungry and wanted to make it in the business that he was like, "I'll do it. I will do all of this extra work, and then he'll get the listing." And so he got very well known, and he was very good at it.
Okay.
And so he started selling a ton of bank-owned properties. So he was doing upwards of 100 transactions a year on his own, which is
Wow.
insane
That's a lot.
to any standards. But he was so hungry coming from where he was that he just kept doing it. Then the laws changed, that the banks couldn't do that anymore. Perfect segue for him on his next act was, well, I know the contractors and I know how to do this. So he started doing fix and flips. And then that's kind of how the rest of his career went, into buying and fixing and flipping, and then eventually holding properties and things like that, and building a pretty nice small real estate portfolio from someone who had nothing.
Brett, I love that story about your dad because we interview a lot of people on the show that are taking on their second act because maybe they put aside a dream for a while and they got into something, chasing a title, or the financial benefit, or just working up the corporate ladder, right? Or we talk to people who have quit one thing to move on to the next because it was unfulfilling, or there was a shift in the family life, or shift in their health or something. But here you have a story of your dad who literally got into his second act to put food on the table, like point
Absolutely.
blank,
Point
or put
blank.
diapers on his child, and it was a make or break moment. And that, I think, truly defines entrepreneurship, where people get into these moments where they have no other choice but to succeed, and they almost will themselves to make it, and they'll do anything. And I love to see or hear about that hunger in people. I don't think we see or experience it as much these days, because I think the economic statuses have changed a little bit, and people, quite frankly, they get comfortable quickly. So to hear that story of your dad, man, is truly remarkable.
Yeah, and it really is. It does actually happen pretty fast too. It's, my boys will never have even the childhood that I had, which was a lot better than my parents, but it wasn't like what my kids have. And so it doesn't take very many generations to kind of forget where you actually came from, or where your family came from. And it's humbling for me to have the opportunity to work with my dad and still see him. And there's some flaws in that too, right? My dad's still working really hard at his age because he just can't shake the fear of where he's been before, and he's nowhere even he doesn't need to live with that fear. So there's some good and bad with it too. He hasn't shook how he got formed through the scarcity mindset. So it's a positive and negative, I would say, for sure.
And have you, in the way that you do business and the way you think about business, do you operate with that same scarcity mindset that I don't want to go there, or I don't ever want to have the risk of going there? And so you're operating sort of in the mode of like, I always got to be, grinding away, making sure that that's the chance of that's less than 1%.
I think that's a great question, and with the risk of sounding, I've never tried to I'm trying to articulate this on the fly. I have a scarcity mindset of missing out on life and my kids, and not being able to provide them opportunities and things like that. I do not have a scarcity mindset on income. I feel like I've been very fortunate. I feel like my dad, my mom, they did the hard work of kind of giving me the recipe of, hey, you got to follow here's a recipe. You can deviate from it, but we kind of figured out the hard work of the recipe. We ate all the bad pies. We figured out the good pies. See if you can make it better. And that's, relating to income. And I feel like, not that I'm killing it or anything, but I live fine, and I feel like I have the recipe and I know how to do it in a lot of different ways, which is kind of it's a shame if you don't take those opportunities of what your people before you have done, and keep that recipe playbook. Now, I do have a lot of fear of missing out on my kids' game, not being there to take my kids to school, not going on enough dates with my wife, not taking care of myself, which is a totally different concept. And to be honest with you, sometimes when I share that with people, people just look at me like, "What are you talking about?" And then some people get it. They either get it or they don't. And I'd say that I have a scarcity mindset in a different area that keeps me motivated to keep working and be able to provide myself flexibility of time, if that makes sense, which
Yeah,
is
that's good.
which is correlated to income. Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a
it makes 100% sense. And I don't know if there's something specific to maybe our generation that has caused us to think more holistically about work and time and family life versus previous generations and where that trend is going. But I can completely relate to you and now try to optimize things as best as possible to spend time with the things and people that are most important to me.
Absolutely.
And in only extreme scenarios make sacrifices for that.
Well, and I believe it's that pendulum, right, that swings so wildly between our childhoods. Brett, your dad worked his tail off to provide for you and your sister and your family, and he missed out on all those moments that were very important, I think, probably to you, and same with me and Michael. And so what we do is that we try to swing that pendulum the other direction, and sometimes we do it too far, right? But now we put a ultimate price on being there for our families, and it also comes from a little bit more comfort, right, in our, economical status and what we are trying to achieve. But we also realized by watching our parents strive so hard, and as they're getting up and older, man, life is short. And is it great? Yeah, it's awesome to hit in game with, money in your bank account to hand over to your family. But if you're never there to experience your family while you're on the earth, they're not going to appreciate it as much as they would. So we have to make those moments count. And that's, I think, what you're
Absolutely.
getting
And
to.
and part of my segue into my second whack, or the large part of it, is that before I had kids, I was grinding really, really hard, working 7 days a week, no boundaries, trying to do just kind of following. Honestly, saw my dad what he was doing, and I thought that, like, again, I was following the recipe that I was given, and and it worked well for me. I'd go back and do it again, but as soon as I had kids and I was married and I didn't know how to take my foot off the gas pedal, it was where I had told Michael one time, because I did started doing some fix and flips with my dad in 2008 when there was a lot of foreclosures. So I got my real estate license in college. I had a lot of really smart friends that were graduating from CU and other places, and they couldn't find jobs. So I was kind of like, what am I going to do if my buddies who are definitely more qualified to get a job are having a hard time? So I actually started getting my real estate license my senior year of college, just so I could jump in with my dad and just kind of help out until the market got better, and or like the hiring market for not a real estate job got better. And then so I started helping my dad with, that was a big foreclosure era again too. And so I was helping him analyze, buy properties out of foreclosure, things like that. And then it happened to be that, that was the kind of the bottom of the market. And I was in my 20s. So what then happened was all of my friends started being of time and age to start buying homes, and homes were cheap. And I had my real estate license, and I would give people really good, straight, you know, I think this is a good property. I don't think this is a good one. I would just be brutally honest with people now, of what I think is a good buy and what's not.
Yeah.
And pretty soon I had a good reputation for giving people good real estate advice. And then all of a sudden I was not doing any fix and flips anymore, the thing that I was more interested in, and buying properties. And I was pretty much just a full blown real estate agent unintentionally for about, again, that comes back to the native thing. I grew up here, so I know quite a few people, and I did not have what I call commission breath. I didn't care if you bought a house or not. I'd care if you got a good deal. I care if you are going to be able to look me in the eyes and be proud of what you bought. And it turns out, unintentionally, that's a good business model because people can trust you. And so I ended up doing that. And as you can imagine, from 2008 until these interest rates just went up quite a bit in the last couple of years, it has been a fast paced buy, sell, like very fast paced market. And what I had told Michael was I had my best, I guess my best, if in quotes, income year, but I was miserable. I was miserable from no boundaries, feeling like I couldn't turn off my brain to be present with my kids and my wife, feeling like I just always had weight on my shoulders, and I was trying to celebrate with a glass of wine around our fire pit in the backyard, and I just started crying, and I was just like, I just can't do this anymore. And
You just feel out of control.
it's very displacing sitting down to celebrate your win. And I want to be realistic of like, I understand what my wins are a very good situation for a lot of people. So I don't ever want to be like, hey, woe is me, but I'm being real on how I felt and where I was at. And I had these big wins in my life and going, I'm just not happy. And then what's my next thing? And my next thing was, I want to go back into the vibes, back into the recognizing the energy and revitalizing properties and buildings, and less in other people's personal process and emotions of buying and selling real estate. And so amazingly enough, I was reminding myself that I need to pray about it. And I was trying to do everything on my own. And 2 weeks later, I'm driving through downtown Littleton and I see this boarded up building. And I promise you, if I didn't even have the lenses, because I had so much weight on my shoulders of everybody else's business and transactions, to see opportunities. And I finally just kind of laid it all down and said, I don't want to do this anymore, in a grateful way, a grateful tone. And I saw this building, and it was, 2 weeks ago, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if it's going to be real estate. I just can't do this anymore. I was so burnt out. Burnout is so real. And then I found this building and hunted it down and bought it 9 months later. And now I'm on my next journey.
Wow.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Department of Defense is working with Google to help secure America's digital defense systems, from establishing cloud-based zero-trust solutions to deploying the latest AI technology. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
All the things from your grandfather to your dad to your own career trajectory up to that point, Brett, I think based on your story, put you in a position to be able to sort of make that decision to pivot. And I like to say, and I always say about myself, I wouldn't change one thing about my past because it then changes everything up to that point. You can't change one single thing, the good and the bad. But I think it's when you hit that pause, whether it's in your backyard over wine or you're out on a run, doing some exercise, or you're having dinner with someone, whatever the thing is, and you just sort of like pause and reflect, and you're like, okay, it's time to pivot and make a change. And while you were driving and as you saw that building that was for sale and chasing that down, I don't know what was going through your head, or if there was like some like spiritual moment that just like sort of led you right to that. I know more about the story, which I'm looking forward to getting to, but if you want to just share if there was any sort of like epiphany in that moment, I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was driving by and I just saw it, and it just looked like this sad building that had so much opportunity. And not opportunity from like, oh, I can make money on this. It was like, it looked like it just needed to be this community space, this community builder. I saw right through the shabby facade and the boarded up windows, and I saw the beauty in it. I saw the beauty in this building that I think it needed to be someone like me to come through and recognize it and not just go, hey, let's just knock this down. I probably should have just knocked it down.
Yeah. I know
Now
we're
that
going to get to that part.
Now that I'm 3 years into it and I understand more about commercial development on a bigger scale like this, but I'm also still really proud. I think it's going to be an amazing thing. But no, I do think I just had enough time to breathe to understand the doors that might be open in front of me. And the other thing, I've got a really good buddy who's kind of a mentor to me. We're a mentor to each other. Actually, I got him into real estate. He's in California, and he's just more of a scale guy where he'll go, hey, I've got more business. I'm going to build a team, and I'm just going to start dishing things. Where that's not me. But I called him, I think the night after I had my little mental breakdown and emotional breakdown, and he just gave me really good advice. And he just said, the things that you are cringing about and don't even want to do are somebody else's blessing. And so I think this is your sign that it's time for you to pass the torch, because the things that you were doing and that really helped you to get you where you're at, that you enjoyed and have enjoyed, is somebody else hates doing that. Somebody else does not want to do that. And I think that, again, having enough time to slow down and really take that and go, if I keep saying yes to the things that make me not as happy as I could be, I'm depriving somebody else who would get that, because the world keeps going. The world keeps going, and those deals happen, and someone's going to find another agent to work with. And that's somebody else's blessing that I'm not even really being grateful for. So I better put myself in a better posture to receive. And the thing is, the people I bought that property from, they were tired of it. They were sick of it. They were ready for their next chapter. And it was not a blessing for them. and it was my blessing. And it's just really cool to see how doors open and close and they're all
Yep.
interconnected.
I love the stories that are intertwined, and I know Michael's alluding to you getting deeper into your history with this building, but the moment you drove by, you were in a place where you needed to grow in a different direction. You're helping this family out, get rid of their asset. You're naming it Murphy's Variety after your grandfather. You're using the skills that your father kind of embedded into you. It's intertwining so many things, and like Michael said, you look back, you can't change one thing without, changing where you're at now, but y and even to the fact that you're gonna open this building up to mom and pop stores who may not have another opportunity somewhere else. You're giving them their second act or third act. You're giving them the opportunity to expand their lives. And so there's just so much that goes into this. And I don't even know the whole story, but so far I'm so captivated by the intertwining of stories and the intertwining of history and the intertwining of opportunities that exist once you're done.
Yeah. Well, now that you say that, I think Michael was actually pointing me back in the direction of how I actually got there. And I kind of forgot until you just said that. My wife's second act was she started a business at home during the same time where I was kind of grinding and going. And she started a consulting business with image where you come in and she figures out what color palette is best on your skin tone. And she was getting so busy. We also then had people in our house all the time. And so that's an extra stress and awesome, because she needed something else beside her. And I left there going like, our house isn't our house. I'm working from home. You're working from home. Great for you. It's taking off, but we need to find somewhere for you to go. And so I started driving. That's how it happened. I started driving around town within 10 minutes of our house going, how can I find something to buy so
There it
my
is.
wife can be not in our house anymore so she can continue to grow on her second act.
That's awesome.
And then that's when I saw the building and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing." And I was trying to buy just one of there's there's a bunch of units. It's 17,000 square feet of vacant property on a main street in downtown Littleton. And I saw this old barbershop space and I was hunted down the owner and I was like, this would be perfect. It's just one little slice right here. And I was just want to buy this, just the slice, because it's going to put my wife in there. And that was going to be my new like reset project of giving myself a breather and kind of getting back into what I want to do. Finally hunted down the owners and they go, nah, we'll sell it to you, but it's the whole thing. I was like, well, whole thing? What are we talking about here? The whole thing down Curtis Street, down Main Street. And he toured me through it. And I was just going, holy smokes. I was trying to buy one unit and I've got an opportunity to buy 10 units that have been vacant since the 90s. And it had so much cool vibe and like opportunity as far as like energy goes, where I liked it enough for my wife to be there. And then that's when I went home and told my wife about it. And she said, I don't know if I can tell you this, but if there's not a bigger opportunity, like if yeah, I don't know if you could have a bigger door saying, walk through this door and do this thing than that this situation. And so we agreed on it, and I went for it and dove in, and now we're here 3 years later, and it's still not open yet. We're still working on permits, but I'm getting my master's, if you will, in small scale commercial development.
That's a second act squared story with your wife's second act and then yours coming together and leading to this. And no prior commercial real estate development, Brett. You found this opportunity. And I know there's some funny stories in going into redeveloping this, but I just want to come back, John. You sort of summarized up to this point Brett's family history and some of the things that impacted him and from that experience. And I know, Brett, the things that you're doing to support the small businesses and sort of preserving the essence of the building in downtown Littleton likely has to do with some of the things you've shared offline about the way that your dad operates. And he does some stuff in the hospitality space and how he takes care of his employees and all of the ways that he approaches business that sure, you want to make money, but it's not just to make a buck. And I don't know if there's
Absolutely.
anything you want to share here with our audience before we start to lead into your commercial real estate development adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So great. I'm very impressed with how much you listen to me ramble when we go see each other at the parks and stuff and whatnot. Yeah. So one of the things my dad and mom have kind of always preached and taught was look for the gaps, look for the people and opportunities that are sitting right there that nobody else is paying attention to.
That's
Usually,
good.
kind of the higher end market or people who are in a really bad spot, but the middle ground usually kind of gets ignored. They're kind of good enough to just like not pay attention to, or you can punt a conversation about anything in the middle pretty easily. It's much more boring. It doesn't have as much weight to it as left or right side of any kind of things, and so my dad bought a hotel. His second act was he found a hotel up in Estes Park and then was like, "Hey, this would be kind of cool, and I'd like to open up a hotel." And he wanted to focus on not being high end or low, and he wanted to provide the best product at a reasonable price for people, and it's done really well. And he's owned a second one, and he's always done that. He's always done his fix and flips. I'm not buying. He doesn't. He's never done a big knockdown and $1 million property when he's done. He always would take a house that was your entry level that had too much work for someone who's entry level and fix it up so that a very modest family could go buy it and enjoy it and live life. And those are kind of the foundational points that was taught to me is look for the gaps. And that doesn't mean we're ignoring the left or right side of anything. It's just trying to pay attention to these missing markets that are right underneath your nose. And that's the mindset. And I had a little bit of commercial experience before that. Is in 2014, I bought a old repair shop in the Sunnyside neighborhood,
Okay.
and I updated that because I thought it had cool vibes and cool energy, and it was in a industrial area and nothing else cool over there. And I started talking to a tattoo artist that I was friends with, and he was telling me it is so hard to get anybody to even return calls. They don't want to return calls to tattoo artists for rental spaces because we just have, it's taboo. And a lot of the owners are old. And I was like, I just bought this building. I was like, I'll put a tattoo shop in there. And that was my first realization of there's all these people in markets where they're just misunderstood. And like the tattoo shop, I was like, I analyzed, I was like, you got tattoos on your neck and face, and all you do is tattoo. Like, you're not gonna not pay rent. This is your option. And so I was like, I'll take the risk on this. I'll take the risk on the small business that gets ignored. And so that was my first taste, and that was in 2014. Then I jumped back into, you know, selling the real estate again. I got wrapped up into very fortunate to have so many people calling me wanting to buy and sell their real estate. So I did get a little taste in 2014. Got a taste of there's all these missing markets of really good tenants that are small mom and pop or like nuanced services. And so I took that experience too. And when I saw this building, I thought I could make this back into what it used to be, which is a bunch of small storefronts with the principles of filling the gaps with small business, mom and pop shops, taking the time to have the conversations and understand what people's businesses are before you just dismiss them. And I've really enjoyed doing that too. I've learned a lot of fascinating information about businesses since I have a lot of people interested in the main street, and I have them send me their business model and talk to me about it. And there's some businesses that are just terrible and they're not going to work, not going to work here. There's not, yeah, it's not going to work. And then I have some where I'm like, wow, this is really incredible. And so that's kind of what we're always just going to, who are the more ignored sections of the market, and how do we uplift that and it with benefit for ourselves. Like I always tell people, I'm not trying to pretend I'm not trying to make good rent and make money doing a fix. Like that's there, it's not this noble, super noble cause. It's there's
It's
some honor
self-serving.
and it's self-serving. Yes. There's a lot of there's a lot of pride in what we do, but
And it hasn't all been smooth sailing with a
no.
115-year-old building. Why don't you share a little bit about your early days jumping into a historical piece of property.
Yeah, and I've kind of also learned why a lot of commercial real estate people are seem a little bit jaded too. There's a lot of rules and policies and regulations that don't make any sense, and they have black and white rules on real estate's gray. Real estate is a gray area, especially in commercial, but the rules are black and white. And so there's some kind of nuances of like I couldn't. It's a historic designated part of downtown Littleton. The building is not itself historic, but it's a historic district. So there's rules on what you can do to a building. So it had this stucco and a mansard roof, and a mansard roof is they don't really have them anymore because they weren't good and people didn't really keep them, and no one's bringing them back. It's when the roof shingles come down off the side and hangs down over, so you've got like shake shingle roofs coming down on your side of your building. Very 50s, 60s design that did not stick. Lots of good things came from the 50s and 60s. That was not
That
one of
wasn't
them.
Not that.
That was not one of them. And that went over the building in the 50s or 60s, so there should have been brick behind it. And I had to do this whole certificate of appropriateness on my design, but you're not allowed to take you can't do any demo to see what's actually underneath it. So we had to make projections about what's underneath it and then commit to that design. Then that design got approved, and then we do the demolition of the exterior, and we found out there's no brick. Someone took the brick off the building and did framing. Some of the brick has absolute holes in it. Like the brick's gone structurally. There's a basement that we didn't know was even in there. So that creates elements. And so it's been a fun discovery project. Oh, doors that were covered by wall, it's just like a mystery of over the eras. And back in the day, they just go, hey, we don't like that anymore. We're going to take it out and refill it. We're just going to cover it. We're just going to cover everything. And there's 4 or 5 layers of discovery and nothing cool, just problems, discovering problems, nothing that you're like, oh, that was an amazing win. So that's been a treat. It's taken a while to get down to the bones and see
Treat.
what we're really working with.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop you. It may cause some delays. But if you have sort of the entrepreneurial mindset and in your second act, you're doing something new, you just have to figure it out.
Well, the nice thing is if I would have been able to just kind of rip and go like I wanted to, the design, the layout would be wildly different than what I'm doing now. I was going to have maybe 4 or 5 spaces, kind of bigger. And then as I've been forced into patience, forced into sitting here, people keep telling me like, "Oh, wow, you're so patient. I'd be so." I'm like, no, you can't. Being mad doesn't get you a permit. Being
Right.
mad doesn't help you check the boxes so that someone can give you the go ahead. So it's made me a calmer person because I've just had to sit in the reality of there's no quick go rounds, which is kind of also a little bit of a lost art nowadays. I'm being forced into patience, but it's been great because great in not in holding cost, great in overall design
Sure.
is that I've been able to sit and I've got a lot of phone calls and I've talked to a lot of the community and I've spent a lot of time on Main Street and I know what's there and what's missing and who's being ignored and who like what we need. And I've changed the design probably about 5 times as I had more conversations. And my contractors and my architect, they love it. They call me Mr. Change Order because it just changes. And I've also learned like you don't want to be called Mr. Change Order.
That's not a sign of endearment or
No.
anything.
So I've already told them, I said, now going forward, we got some permits. You guys just tell me no. If I come in here with a new idea, don't allow me to change it. This is good. Cause I'm a little bit vibey, John. Michael knows me, but I'm a little bit vibey. I like to just like go in and sit in a space and feel it out and go, hey, I feel like, blues music used to be played here. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Probably was at least on the radio. And then I go, I'm going to change. There needs to be a window here because I could feel it, and I change it, and I think it's going to be a really beautiful design. But yeah, that's the beauty of being forced into a slowdown. I couldn't go forward So I had to sit in it. It was almost like real estate meditation. You just really sit in it and go, what does this mean? What is it telling me? What are people telling me? So I'm pretty excited for what it's going to be, because I think it's going to be even a more meaningful project.
Brett, as you're talking about the discovery of this building and you're talking about the roof and the structure, right? Man, it feels like a direct correlation to my second act and a lot of the second acts that people have identified as when they come on the show. If we could have just gotten to the answer quickly and it was a seamless process, we wouldn't have ended up where we are today, especially me. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I'm like that building, and I'm thinking, oh man, underneath that exterior 20 years of career is this person that I'm gonna be. And I quickly realize when I start ripping off those layers, when I start ripping off that title and that 20-year history of being a Marine, the underlayer is not what I expected. And the process of getting to where I am today was sometimes painful, sometimes a lot harder than I expected. There were some joyful moments mixed in there, a lot of discovery, a lot of like ripping off shingles to figure out what's part of this structure and what's keeping the bones up. But man, I wouldn't change. Maybe I'd shorten the time a little bit, but I wouldn't change that process because it's made me who I am today. Much like your building, you had to go through those layers to figure out what it contains. And even talking about your vibey process, you had to sit there and like figure out, how do I want this process to be? And how do I want this building to look? And what's the history that I need to bring back to life? Man, it's just the parallels are unbelievable. And so I really appreciate you talking about that difficulty and this time, because I think I want the listeners to even go back and listen to that and relay maybe their life or their second act to the building and that discovery process, because I think it's very important to recognize.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things with that, which is very, very parallel too, is when we're going through and pulling off all these layers, if you could go back in time, there's a reason that that was there. There is a reason for all these things that are now going in the trash. It's not, they weren't always trash. They weren't things that need to be discarded. And
Yep.
so I think there's a beautiful metaphor with that too, of like throwing stuff in the trash. Well, it's because it's not needed anymore. But it did have a meaning and a purpose at one time. And so I think it's a going through an old building and pulling back layers and looking at the deeper meaning is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I love the expression you use, forced into patience, Brett, because I know my wife has accused me at times of working with an unhealthy sense of urgency on certain things. And, long term, that's probably not good on a number of fronts. And whenever you're starting something new, myself included, I remind myself that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And it really does come down to patience and focus and commitment to what you believe in to get you to where you want to go. So a lot of the best things in life happen because other things don't happen. And your story is just sort of encapsulated all of that stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the cool part is like I think we could do a follow-up in 2 years from now, and let's talk about what's in that building and where it came from even here, where you guys are at. And I've got a big mountain to climb still. So
Well, Brett, as we start to wrap things up, because we are going to track your journey and hopefully have you back on the show. When we wrap things up on our shows, we like to ask if there's any parting advice, practical advice you want to leave to our audience who are just getting started. Maybe they haven't even started yet. They're just thinking about getting started on some new endeavor and they're trying to work up the courage to do that. What can you share with them?
that's a deep question. When you're burnt out and all your check engine lights are going on, trust that and sit down long enough, and also understand the difference between sometimes you just have hard seasons in life and you got to get through it and you got to get to the next part. and understand the difference between a season and a next chapter. And a lot of times they're pretty hard to decipher. And so surrounding yourself with a couple, not a whole lot of people, but a couple good people who really know you and even know you enough to see when your eyes are sparkling and when they're sad or not where they should be, and trust those people, trust your check engine light, and trust the people who know you really well. And if people don't know you well enough, I'd start there too. If you have to have people who know you well enough to help you with big decisions, and then trust it, because in the business world, your hard times are somebody else's blessing. And I think that is just so important to remember, that when you pass the torch, there's somebody else who would love to do what you're not wanting to do right now. And that's how the world keeps turning, and the opportunities and the growth. And that's what it's meant to be that way. It's meant to be that way. And sometimes we wait too long to, you're never going to know if you did it too soon, but you will know when you waited too long. And so just trust yourself.
Nice.
I like it, Brett.
Yeah.
Man, the story of you ripping apart a 115-year-old building, the time that you've taken to understand that process, what even got you to that place, and then, like I said before, the opportunities that you're going to open up to people has been so impressive to me, and lots of reflection. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this episode again in kind of a different light in comparison to my journey. But I appreciate your honesty, the openness about the difficulty that it's been. And I think you look back on this building and think, man, what a blessing in my life that this thing's been, because I think you're not done learning either. So I appreciate you just sharing that with us, and then coming on the show for the last hour and opening up. So if some of our guests want to reach out to you and get to know you better, or contact you for any reason, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
That's the beauty of my second act, is I'm trying to be unfindable. I don't want anyone to find me. I wanted to, no, just kidding.
I was gonna say you failed because I found you on LinkedIn already. So
I have a website. It's jamespatrickgwv.com, and that's my small little real estate holdings and firm that I created. And there's a contact link on that. You can shoot me a message. And I know if you log on to that and shoot me a message from there, it's legit, because nobody has messaged me on there yet. So I'm excited to see if anyone sends me a message. So that's jamespatrickgwv.com. And James Patrick is my son's middle names.
I love
nice.
it.
Okay. And we can find Brett on LinkedIn if you want to go a more conventional route.
Right? Oh yeah. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm just, I don't use that as much as I should, but now I'm going to.
And you got a picture of your dad right there with you on the cover, huh? On the
Absolutely.
splash page. Love
Absolutely.
it. I love it.
Well,
Well,
this has been so much fun having you on. Another local Colorado person,
Yeah.
and we know each other through other means, which is always nice for me to learn more about your story, so that when we do see each other in person, I feel like I have a better connection with you through this process. And
Absolutely.
thanks for sharing with our audience.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get up there to Littleton and check this building out, and I'd love to meet you as well in person, Brett. Man, what a breath of energy you bring to the show, and so thank you. Thanks for being
Well,
on.
thank you guys for putting this all together. I think you're doing a really important. It's a really important for people to see that there's a lot of people with a second act and a third act, and I think you're giving an amazing platform to encourage people that they're not alone. I think a lot of times you think you're the only one who wants to do that second act, and so this platform really helps understand that there's lots of people who want to do that. So I think you guys are doing amazing work. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah. Oh, we appreciate that, Brett.
Absolutely.
I guess with that said, why don't we end on a high note?
Yeah. Anything I say after that's just gonna bring it down.
No, we
So
can't. We can't top that.
let's end the show there, Michael.
All right.
Phenomenal guest. I learned so much today from Brett, and I just appreciate you for finding him and bringing him on. So great job. and great episode.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, John. Till
Yeah.
next time.
We'll see ya.
See ya.
See you soon.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballenger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act Movement on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.